The station never truly slept. Lights dimmed and corridors quieted, but the hum of power, air, and distant engines always remained. Commander Elias Rowan had learned to sleep inside that sound, letting it blend into the back of his thoughts, like rain against a roof. On that night, however, the sound changed. It was not louder. It was wrong. His eyes opened before his mind fully woke. Training did that. Something had shifted in his room. The lights were low, set to night cycle. The wide window showed a field of stars drifting slowly past, the station turning with careful precision. For a moment, Elias thought he had imagined it. Then he noticed the air felt heavier, warmer, as if someone else was breathing close by. He did not move. The door behind him slid shut with a soft hiss. Elias's hand twitched near the emergency panel beside his bed, but he stopped himself. Whoever had entered had bypassed station security, room locks, and internal sensors. That meant panic would only make things worse. A shadow crossed the floor. She stepped into view. She was tall, taller than most humans, with long limbs and pale skin marked by faint lines that glowed softly in the dark. Her eyes reflected the low light, calm and unblinking. She wore no armor, no weapons, no translator collar. In her hands, she carried folded plates of what Elias recognized as ceremonial battle gear, crafted from layered alloy and living crystal. She placed them on the floor with care. Elias sat up slowly, keeping his hands visible. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed calm. He had faced pirates, hostile fleets, and political threats that could erase entire colonies. None of that felt like this moment. Without speaking, the woman removed the last of her garments. There was no shame in her movements, no hesitation. It was not performance, it was purpose. She stepped closer, then lay down across his chest, her weight solid and warm, her head resting just below his shoulder. Her breathing slowed until it matched his own, deep and steady. One long arm rested over him, her hand open, empty. Elias froze. Every instinct screamed danger. His species evolved to react to threats with speed and force. But another part of him, the part shaped by years of first contact missions and fragile treaties, noticed something else. She was shaking, very slightly, but enough. Her eyes closed. The station's emergency alert chimed quietly in his mind, a warning only he could hear through his neural implant. Unauthorized presence detected. Diplomatic priority unknown. Response pending. He canceled the alert with a thought. Slowly, carefully, he placed his hand against the side of the bed instead of on her. He did not touch her. Not yet. Minutes passed. Finally, she spoke. Her voice low and controlled, the words shaped carefully through a translator woven beneath her skin. "Do not move," she said. "If you survive this moment, your people may survive what comes next." Elias swallowed. "You broke into my room," he said calmly. "You removed your armor, and now you're telling me to stay still. I need more than that." She did not open her eyes. "If I explain too soon, you will react like the others." "The others?" he asked. Her breathing tightened. "Every species we have tested." That word caught his attention. Tested. Outside the window, a distant line of light flickered and vanished. His implant identified it as a hyperspace ripple far beyond the station's sensor range. He stayed still. "What kind of test requires this?" he asked. "Truth," she replied. Her hand tightened briefly against his chest, then relaxed. "Among my people, to remove one's armor before a stranger is to accept death if the stranger chooses it. To lie upon another's heart is to give them the power to end you without resistance." Elias felt the weight of that settle slowly. "You came to see if we would kill you," he said. "No," she corrected. "I came to see if you would not." The room felt suddenly very small. She opened her eyes and looked up at him.
"Your species is known for war," she said. "For invention."
"For survival against impossible odds. You are admired. You are feared. But fear tells us nothing about mercy.
Elias exhaled slowly. So you decided to break every rule of contact and risk an incident that could start a war?
Yes, she said simply. Because a war is already coming, his implant chimed again, louder now. Fleet movement detected. Unknown configuration. Extreme mass signatures. How long? He asked. Hours, she said. Perhaps less. And your people? He asked. She closed her eyes again. We are the ones who bring the test. Elias stared at the ceiling, forcing his thoughts into order. This was bigger than a single room, bigger than a single choice. He could feel the pressure of command pressing down on him, reminding him that every action he took represented billions of lives. He still did not move. You know this looks like an attack, he said quietly. Security will come. They already are, she replied. I allowed it. He frowned. Why? Because what happens next must be seen. As if on cue, the soft sound of boots approached outside the door. Security teams moved with precision, their presence clear even without visual confirmation. The door panel flashed red, warning of forced entry authorization. Elias raised his voice slightly. Stand down, he said, transmitting on the internal channel. This is a diplomatic encounter. Silence followed. Then, Commander, we have an unidentified alien in your quarters, came the tense reply. She is not registered. Protocol requires. I know the protocol, Elias said. Override it. The pause was longer this time. Sir, the voice said carefully, this will be recorded. Good, Elias replied. The woman's grip tightened again, not in fear this time, but something closer to disbelief. They listen to you, she murmured. They trust me, Elias said. That's different. The door did not open. Time passed slowly after that. The station's lights shifted toward full brightness as artificial dawn began. Outside, more hyperspace ripples appeared, faint but undeniable. The woman finally moved, lifting her head slightly.
You did not strike, she said. You did not restrain me.
You did not call for force. No, Elias said. Why? He considered the question. Because I don't know you yet, he said. And because if someone comes to me without weapons, I don't treat them like an enemy. She studied his face, as if searching for something hidden. Whatever she saw made her nod once. Slowly. Then the first condition is met, she said. What condition? Elias asked. She pushed herself upright and swung her legs off the bed, careful not to touch him as she stood. She retrieved her armor but did not put it on.
Humanity will be offered a choice, she said. Not conquest.
Not alliance. Judgment. That doesn't sound like a choice, Elias said. It is the only one that matters, she replied. Stand with us and prove that strength can protect the weak. Or refuse, and be treated like every other species that mistook power for dominance. The door behind her finally opened, security officers flooding the room, weapons raised but uncertain. Elias raised a hand. Lower them, he ordered. They hesitated, then obeyed. The woman looked back at him one last time. You passed the first test without knowing it, she said.
That is rare.
She stepped past the guards and into the corridor, her presence leaving behind silence and unanswered questions. Elias remained seated on the bed long after she was gone, staring at the stars, feeling the weight of the future settle onto his chest where she had been. Whatever was coming, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity was no longer being watched, it was being measured. The room felt empty in a way he had never experienced before, as if something important had been removed along with the alien woman. The bed still held a faint warmth where she had lain, but he forced himself to stand and dress. There was no time to think about comfort or confusion. The station was already moving toward crisis mode. Outside his quarters, security officers waited in tight formation, Their faces showed restraint, not fear, but Elias knew them well enough to see the tension behind their eyes. She walked out freely, the lead officer said carefully. No resistance, no threats. She was never here to fight, Elias replied. That's not what the sensors say, another officer added. Multiple unknown fleets are appearing at the edge of detection. Mass readings are off the scale. I know, Elias said. Get me to the command chamber.
And notify Earth Command. Full priority.
The walk through the station felt longer than usual. Crews moved quickly but quietly, trained to avoid panic. Screens along the walls showed star maps filled with red markers, blinking as more contacts appeared. Each one represented power beyond anything the station could stop. In the command chamber, analysts and officers filled every station. The air was thick with voices, data streams, and suppressed fear. When Elias entered, the noise lowered slightly. Rank still mattered. Even now, he moved to the center platform. Report. A tactical officer spoke first.
We're seeing at least 12 fleets, Commander. Different configurations, different energy signatures, but they're moving in coordinated patterns.
They're not attacking, they're positioning. These are civilizations we have erased, the voice said. Not because they were weak, but because they chose power without responsibility. They harmed those who could not defend themselves. The diplomat whispered, You wiped them out. Yes, the voice replied calmly. We are not proud of it. But the galaxy learned to fear us. Fear kept order, until it did not. The images shifted. A new force appeared, unlike anything Elias had seen. Its ships were sharp, angular, cold. Where they passed, stars dimmed. This enemy does not fear us, the voice said. They do not fear you. They erase everything.
We cannot stop them alone. Elias understood then.
This was not a threat. It was an invitation built on pressure. You're asking us to stand with you, he said. We are asking you to choose, the voice replied. If you refuse, we will not attack you. But we will not protect you either. You will face what comes alone. The chamber erupted in quiet debate. Officers argued probabilities. Diplomats warned of political fallout. Analysts calculated survival odds. Elias raised his hand. Silence. The room obeyed. He looked at the images again. He thought of colonies still growing, of children who had never seen Earth, of species humanity had promised to protect through treaties and aid missions. You tested us through vulnerability, he said. Now you test us through fear. Yes, the voice replied. Fear reveals truth faster than comfort. Elias took a slow breath. Then here is our answer. He turned to the chamber. Prepare a response fleet, he ordered, not for attack, for escort and evacuation support. Send medical ships, supply carriers, defensive platforms only. The officers stared at him. You're committing us without approval, the diplomat said sharply. I'm committing us to who we are, Elias replied. Transmit to Earth Command. This is not an alliance of conquest.
It's a line we choose to stand on.
The voice spoke again. Quieter now. You choose to act before securing advantage. Yes, Elias said, because someone has to. There was a long pause. The massive ship's rings slowed their rotation.
Then the second condition is met, the voice said. What was the first? Elias asked.
That you would not strike the unarmed, the voice replied. The second is that you would not abandon the weak. A new signal appeared. Coordinates, dozens of them. These worlds will fall first, the voice said. We will fight. You will decide how. Elias felt the weight of history settle over him, heavy but clear. We don't fight for judgment, he said. We fight so others get to live long enough to choose their own future. For the first time, something like approval entered the alien voice. Then prepare, humanity, it said. The galaxy will soon learn why restraint, once chosen, becomes the strongest force of all. The transmission ended. The fleets held position, no longer distant observers, but silent allies waiting to see what humans would do next. Elias turned back to his people. Fear was still there, but something else had joined it now. Purpose. Get to work, he said. We have lives to save. As the station surged with motion and light, Elias allowed himself one brief thought of the woman who had come without armor and trusted him with her life. He understood now. That moment had not been about survival. It had been about who humanity would become when the universe finally asked them to choose. The human fleet did not move like a weapon. That was the first thing the observers noticed. From the outer edge of the system, the alien judgment fleets watched as ships launched from the station and nearby human worlds. There were warships among them, yes, but they were not leading. Instead, slow medical vessels moved first, followed by supply carriers, habitat transports, and construction frames. Defense ships formed wide shields around them, not sharp spearheads. Elias Rowan stood on the command deck of the lead coordination ship, hands clasped behind his back. The stars ahead were full of signals now. Distress calls layered over each other, voices from species humanity barely knew, all begging for help as the enemy advanced. The enemy ships moved with perfect order. They did not rush. They did not threaten. They erased. A world vanished on the main screen. Not exploded, not burned, simply gone, replaced by empty space and fading energy scars. Silence spread across the deck. We are too late for that one, an officer said quietly. Yes, Elias replied, but not for the next. The human fleet adjusted course. Engines flared. They moved toward a cluster of inhabited systems marked for imminent destruction. The Judgment fleet followed, keeping distance, watching. On the first endangered world, chaos ruled the surface. Cities were packed with civilians, skyways clogged, governments collapsing under fear. Many had never seen a human before. Some did not trust them. Some did not care. Human ships did not wait for permission. They broadcast on every frequency, using simple language, repeating the same message again and again. We are here to help. Follow the signals. We will protect you. Medical shuttles descended through fire and debris. Human soldiers did not fire unless fired upon. They carried children. They carried elders. They carried anyone who could not move on their own. A young officer watched the feeds with tight fists. Sir, she said, we're exposing ourselves. The enemy could strike us instead. Elias nodded. They could. Why aren't they? She asked. On the far screen, enemy ships slowed. Their formations shifted, not to attack, but to observe more closely. They're learning, Elias said. As evacuations continued, something unexpected happened. Local defense forces, once panicked, began to fall into line with human coordination. They copied human tactics. Wide shields, clear paths, prioritize lives over territory. Hours passed. Millions were saved. But not all. On another world, human ships arrived too late. The enemy did not slow this time. A city vanished while evacuees were still boarding transports. The shockwave tore through nearby ships, sending alarms screaming across human decks. Damage reports, someone shouted. Multiple hull breaches, came the reply. We can hold, but... Elias stared at the screen where the city had been. His jaw tightened. Pull back the damaged ships. Rotate in fresh escorts. Keep the evacuation moving. You're not ordering retaliation? An officer asked, disbelief clear in his voice. No, Elias said. We protect who we can. The Judgment fleet shifted again. Several of their massive ships moved closer now, placing themselves between human vessels and the enemy. It was the first time they had intervened directly. A message came through, not from the enemy, but from the woman who had come to Elias's room. Her image appeared on a private channel, her expression unreadable. You bleed for strangers, she said. We bleed for lives, Elias replied. Your losses are mounting, she said. This path leads to exhaustion. Yes, Elias said, but not regret. She studied him in silence. Many before you chose efficiency. Fewer ships lost, faster victories. And more graves, Elias said, her eyes lowered slightly. That is why they failed. The channel closed. As days passed, the pattern became clear. Wherever humans went, survival rates increased. Wherever they stood their ground, the enemy slowed. Not because humans were stronger, but because they refused to abandon anyone once they arrived. Human engineers began adapting on the fly. They turned construction frames into mobile shields. They rewired medical ships to emit energy fields that disrupted enemy erasure waves. None of it was perfect. Much of it was dangerous. It worked, anyway. On the fourth major evacuation, the enemy finally responded. A human escort ship vanished mid-maneuver, erased with surgical precision. Another followed. Panic rippled through the fleet. Elias felt it too, a cold fear pressing against his chest. He forced his voice steady. "All units hold formation," he ordered. "Do not pursue. Tighten shields. Protect the transports." The enemy ships advanced, closer than ever before. Their presence felt heavy, wrong, like space itself rejected them. Then something changed. One of the judgment ships moved directly into the enemy's path. Its rings flared with light. The erasure wave struck it head-on. The judgment ship held. The wave bent, split, and dispersed. The enemy paused. Across the human fleet, stunned silence turned into quiet disbelief. "They can block it," someone whispered. "Yes," Elias said, "but they waited to see if we were worth blocking it for." The enemy ships began to withdraw, not fleeing, but repositioning. They had learned something too. They had learned that humans would not break easily. As the evacuation completed, the Judgment Fleet transmitted again, this time openly. "Humanity," the voice said, "you have reached the third condition." Elias closed his eyes briefly. "Which is? That you would endure loss without becoming what you fight?" the voice replied. Around him, tired officers listened, many with blood on their uniforms, faces lined with exhaustion and grief. "We haven't endured yet," Elias said. "We're still standing." "That is endurance," the voice said. The image shifted. New data appeared. The enemy's core worlds, their production centers, their command structures. A path to victory. "Now," the voice continued, "we ask the final question. When given the power to end this quickly, will you choose destruction or responsibility?" Elias stared at the data. A direct strike could save countless lives. It would also erase entire systems, just as the enemy had done. He felt the eyes of his crew on him. He thought of the first moment in his room, of a stranger choosing vulnerability over armor. He looked back at the screen. "We will end this," Elias said. "But not by becoming executioners." The voice did not respond immediately. When it did, it carried something new. "Respect, then prepare," it said. "The final measure will decide not just this war, but the future balance of the galaxy." As the fleets turned toward the heart of the conflict, Elias felt the weight of command heavier than ever before, but beneath it, steady and unbreakable, was something stronger. The certainty that humanity had already passed a point of no return, not toward dominance, toward becoming the species others would run toward when the universe began to fall apart. The battle never came the way anyone expected. There was no final explosion that shook the stars, no single moment where the enemy was crushed and the galaxy cheered. Instead, the end arrived quietly, shaped by thousands of choices made by tired people who refused to stop caring. Elias Rowan stood on the observation deck as the last enemy structure powered down. The dark shapes that had once erased worlds now floated silent and empty, their systems locked by codes written jointly by human engineers and the Judgment Fleet. Not destroyed, disabled, contained. Across dozens of systems, the same thing was happening. The war was over. Human ships moved slowly through the aftermath. Medical crews treated not only their own wounded, but prisoners as well. Supply ships delivered food and repair materials to worlds that no longer trusted anyone, yet accepted help because there was no other choice. The Judgment Fleet remained nearby, no longer looming, no longer distant. They had repositioned themselves as guardians, watching not humanity, but the fragile peace forming in the space between broken civilizations. Elias had not slept in nearly 3 days. His uniform was stained, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, but his posture was steady. He watched a damaged transport dock safely, its hull scarred but intact. Thousands of lives aboard it were still breathing because someone, somewhere, had refused to give up. Behind him, quiet footsteps approached. "She asked for you," a voice said. Elias turned. The woman stood a few steps away, wearing her armor now, though the helm was removed. Her expression was calm, but something softer rested behind her eyes. "Where?" Elias asked. "The council chamber," she replied. "All of them are waiting." The chamber was larger than any human design, shaped to hold beings of many forms. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space, some physically present, others appearing as light and sound. The air carried tension, brief, and cautious hope. At the center, the Judgment Fleet's primary speaker hovered as a shifting field of light. "Humanity," the voice said. "You have reached the final measure. You were given power," the voice continued. "Knowledge that could have ended this conflict quickly, through destruction equal to what you faced."
You refused. We did, Elias said simply.
"Why?" the voice asked. "Efficiency favors finality." Elias looked around the chamber. He saw species that had once feared humans, others who had doubted them, some who had been saved by them. "Because ending a threat isn't the same as ending a future," he said. "We didn't fight to win. We fought so something could still exist afterward." Silence followed. The woman spoke next. "Among my people," she said, "we believed mercy was weakness, that restraint invited extinction. We were wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. She continued, "Humanity bled without becoming cruel. They suffered loss without turning it into hatred. When they could have chosen dominance, they chose responsibility." The judgment speaker shifted, its light dimming slightly. "The test is complete," it said. "Humanity has passed." The words carried weight beyond language. Data rippled across every channel, every network. A formal declaration witnessed by the galaxy. "You will no longer be measured," the voice said. "You will be joined." "What does that mean?" a delegate asked. "It means," the voice replied, "that when the next darkness comes, and it will, humanity will not stand alone, nor will they stand above others." Elias felt the tension inside him finally loosen. Not relief, something deeper. After the council dispersed, Elias returned to the observation deck. The stars looked different now. Not safer, just shared. The woman joined him, standing beside the window.
"You never asked my name," she said.
Elias smiled faintly. "I figured you'd tell me when it mattered." She nodded. "It matters now. I am Salith."
Elias,
he replied. "I know." She watched a convoy of evacuation ships heading home. "When I lay across your chest," she said quietly, "I expected one of two outcomes: death, or proof that my people were right to fear you." "And you got something else," Elias said. "Yes," Salith replied. "I found something we forgot how to look for." They stood in silence for a moment. "What happens now?" Elias asked. "Now?" she said. "Now the galaxy learns how to rebuild without needing monsters to protect it." In the weeks that followed, stories spread faster than any fleet ever could. They spoke of humans who stayed behind on dying worlds until the last civilian escaped, of soldiers who lowered weapons even when fired upon, choosing shields over revenge, of commanders who accepted loss without turning it into cruelty. They also spoke of mistakes, of ships that arrived too late, of lives that could not be saved. Humanity did not hide those stories. They carried them openly as reminders of the cost of caring. Earth Command released a single statement, broadcast everywhere. We did not save the galaxy. We simply refused to abandon it. On a quiet evening, long after the fleets had dispersed, Elias returned to his quarters. The room was the same as before. Clean, silent, ordinary. He sat on the edge of the bed and rested his hands against his knees. For the first time since the war began, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it all. The fear, the doubt, the moments where one wrong choice could have changed everything. A soft chime sounded at the door. Salith stood there, without armor this time, wearing simple station clothing. I wanted to see the place where it began, she said. Elias stepped aside. It's not much. It was enough, she replied. She looked at the bed, then at him. Among my people, history records battles and victories. Among yours, I see something different.
What's that?
Elias asked. Moments, she said. Small ones, quiet ones, where a choice was made without an audience. She sat across from him, not touching this time. The galaxy will remember the fleets, she said. But I will remember this room. Elias met her gaze. So will I. Outside the window, the stars continued their slow movement. Somewhere out there, worlds were rebuilding. Children were sleeping safely for the first time in weeks. Species once alone were now connected by something stronger than fear. Humanity had not become rulers. They had become something rarer. When the universe tested them with power, they answered with restraint. When it tested them with fear, they answered with courage. And when it tested them with the chance to dominate, they chose instead to protect. The galaxy would never forget that, because long after weapons fell silent and fleets faded into history, one truth remained clear, written not in conquest, but in trust. When everything else failed, humanity was the species that stayed. Positioning for what? Elias asked. No known formation, the officer admitted. It's like they're waiting. Elias thought of the woman's words. Judgment. Any communication? He asked. None, another officer said. They're silent. No hails. No probes. A senior diplomat stepped forward. Earth Command is demanding an explanation, she said. They want to know why an unregistered alien was allowed to leave freely. Elias nodded. Tell them the truth. We were tested, and it isn't over. The room fell quiet. You're saying this is deliberate? Someone asked. A show of force? Yes, Elias said, but not for intimidation, for observation. That doesn't make sense, the diplomat said. Why would anyone bring that much power just to watch? Because they've already decided most outcomes. Elias replied, they're here to see if we prove them wrong. Before anyone could respond, a new alert flashed across the main screen. A single object detached from the nearest fleet and moved forward. It was massive, larger than any ship the station had encountered, shaped like layered rings rotating slowly around a dark core. A voice filled the chamber, clear and calm, translated instantly into every known language. Humanity, it said. You have been observed. No weapons powered up. No shields flared. The voice continued. Across the stars, strength has taken many forms. Most choose domination. Some choose deception. Few choose restraint. You were tested by one who carried the weight of our judgment. You did not fail. Elias stepped forward. If this is judgment, he said, then speak clearly. What do you want from us? The voice paused as if considering. We want to know if you will act, it said. Not for yourselves alone, but for others. Images appeared on the screen. Worlds burned. Cities shattered. Entire species fleeing before unstoppable forces. Elias felt his jaw tighten.